Thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Nick and I'm one of the events hosts here at Powell's Books in Portland, Oregon. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to check out our lineup of upcoming virtual events by visiting us at powells.com. If you don't already do so, please check us out on social media on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. But today we are thrilled to welcome Uli Beutter Cohen, Simmone Taitt, Daniel Vosovic, and Kamau Ware. And so I'm going to, is Simmone?
I think you're going to keep going.
I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go ahead.
Internet completely, and will rejoin us when possible.
I just noticed that. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce everyone and we'll just keep going with there. So, all right. All right. Oops. Hi, Simmone. We're gonna pause 1 second and just let Simmone get in here. So
I'm back.
Okay, all right, cool. So if you are ready, I will turn things over to you and let you introduce everyone, Simmone. And thank you everyone for being here with us tonight. So
thanks, Nick.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Simmone Taitt. I am going to be moderating this awesome panel tonight. It's really more like a conversation. I'm also the founder and CEO of a telehealth company called Poppy Seed Health, where we serve to destigmatize shame for all birthing people. And I'm going to introduce our panel. I'm actually going to end with Uli because she is the reason why we are all here for the anticipated book that's coming out, Between the Lines, on November 9th. You're going to hear me say that a couple of times, so you might as well put it on your calendar now, pre-order now. And we have Daniel and Kamau with us tonight. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read their bios first and give them a proper introduction, because this is, I'm telling you, such a powerhouse panel tonight. I think you're going to very much enjoy. So I'm going to start with Daniel. Daniel Vosovic is the founder and creative director of The Kit. Chic Tomboy has remained the core DNA throughout Daniel's career, which began in 2006. After participating in the very popular Project Runway, if you were like me, totally obsessed, and notable CFDA fashion incubator, Daniel recognized the evolving landscape of fashion and the demands of today's consumers. The Kit is the brainchild of Daniel and his concept of the modern woman, a mix of masculine and feminine, and this is the most important part, sustainable, made-to-order pieces that look to redefine designer fast fashion. We love a disruptor. Kamau Ware is an award-winning visual artist and storyteller based right here in our neighborhood in New York City. Kamau creates new narratives about the African diaspora's history through photography, films, exhibitions, and events. He founded the Black Gotham Experience, BGX, in 2010 to illustrate the impact of the African diaspora through art and walking tours, which are amazing, that ask participants to embody historic figures through imagination and empathy. It's truly an incredible experience. When you visit New York, you have to go on a tour. And then the woman who has gathered us here tonight, Uli Beutter Cohen, is a New York City-based documentarian, artist, and the creator of Subway Book Review. She explores belonging to a time and place where writing and photography. Uli is a sought-after speaker and panelist. Her work has been featured in print, on TV, and online by New York Magazine, Esquire, Vogue, Forbes. I'm going to go through them all because this woman you need to know. Oh, the Oprah Magazine, Glamour, the BBC, The Guardian, and many, many others. Between the Lines, dropping on November 9th, pre-order now. Mark your calendars to go to your local bookstore to pick it up, like Powell's. Between the Lines, Stories from the Underground is her first book, and Uli lives in Brooklyn. I want to first start with you, Uli, because you brought us all together tonight. And the topic that we're focused on is invisible, right? Making the invisible visible. And I think for all of our new friends, you have to tell us why you decided to start Subway Book Review. Tell us a bit about Subway Book Review.
Well. Thank you, Simmone, for going into, the beginning, the birth story. I wouldn't imagine it's starting anywhere else with you. And I want to say that I'm really blessed to be on this panel with all of your dear friends. We have history together. We have shared friends together. So this is like a very sweet homecoming to Portland, where I lived for 12 years and grew up into an adult. So not really, still not an adult. Daniel's like, nah, you never came around. You never did it. And the thing that happened, of course, when I left Portland and moved to New York City, I was and still am, a very small fish in an incredibly large pond. And I really wanted, as a storyteller, to find a space where I could get to know the city, but also could get to know myself, which, of course, as storytellers, as anyone who creates anything, and I'm sure all of you can attest to this, who are here listening and who are here as panelists, when you create something, you're also creating a new layer for yourself. You're peeling back the layers of an onion and you're finding out what you're made of. And for me, the most iconic space in New York City is, of course, the subway, because in the underground is where all movements are born. And I took that quite literally and took to the subway system of New York and really wanted to spend time in that iconic place and let it truly wash over me to see what would stand out to me. And Kamau knows this, Simmone knows this, Daniel, I don't know if you know this, but at the same time, I had formed this artist group that gathered under the name Accountability Group. Kamau knows.
Of course you did. Of course you did, Uli.
Of course I did. And it was very German. It had a very straightforward name. We did exactly that. We were a group that held each other creatively accountable. And that group would give each other creative assignments, would give each other, practices. And my early assignment was to find a place to observe it and to become really still and to see what occurred to me. And out of that assignment and exercise, Subway Book Review was truly born, because as a storyteller, when you become still and you listen, it became very clear very quickly that there were amazing readers on the subway. And that readers, once I started to get curious about them and what they were immersing themselves in, and of course, books are a reflection of who we want to become and who we are and where we want to go. I thought that those kind of New Yorkers would have interesting things to say, and that turned out to be true. 7 years later, we're here.
And in the most literal sense, Uli, do you find that when you approach a stranger to stranger, right, who's buried in a book, do you find that they're trying to hide? So there is some invisible traits there. And how do you bring someone out of whatever they're reading to actually chat with you?
I don't know that. I think that books are often seen as a solitary experience and reading is seen as a solitary experience, but it's absolutely not. I mean, look at Daniel's fabulous background, right? That is a shelf. That is not a screensaver. There are things on display.
It's all fake.
They're all decoy books. They're not.
Don't move too much, Daniel.
You know what I mean? Like, books are part of our lives, I will say, and Daniel, please chime in on this. Books are part of our lives, and Kamau, please also chime in on this, because books play a very important role in your life, and Simmone, yours as well. I don't think books are private at all. We deal with books very similar in terms of our identity, like fashion, I would say, because they communicate something about us. Daniel's nodding. Let's go.
I literally was going to say, books for me in New York in particular have actually been conversation starters. Mm-hmm. Truly, the park bench, the subway, oh, you're reading this? Oh, have you gotten to this part? Oh my God, I was warned when I was carrying a little life home from the bookstore this person approached me and said, just wait. And sure enough, couldn't agree more, Uli, couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And Kamau, I don't know that I read this in your bio, but I know it to be true. You're a historian, right? So let's talk about what it means to take stories from the African diaspora and just stories that we wouldn't even know, and your experience in building Black Gotham Experience to make these stories visible.
Totally. Well, I think in many ways, Uli and I are like similar spirits in different parts of the cosmos. Part of what I tell people who take Black Gotham walks is not to privilege the archive. And that's been a bit of a trajectory for myself, because when you're reading books and you're seeing the list of primary materials in the back, the goal was to get to those libraries, those repositories, put your gloves on and see what's been left behind, kept in flat files and protected through the centuries. And you find out that a lot of times that repository reflects that time period. And so you go back into the past and find yourself remixing, colonialism and sexism and racism, you know what I'm saying? Phobias toward different types of sexual identification. And so you have to almost dig into the archive with a certain level of intention and purpose, or else all you're going to do is repeat what you're trying to deconstruct. And so I tell people that the biggest archive in the world is the human body. We carry stories, we carry ancestors, we have angels, and if we can tap into our own spirit, there's information there that's valid. So when Uli approached me like, what are you reading on a train? It was just kind of like, who is this white woman asking me what I'm reading? I don't know you. But you seem nice. I'm reading about slavery in New York. Let's talk about it. And I think that that's part of what is important in the conversation is what's happening now. You know what I mean? And so I think that what somebody's reading, what's in their feeling, what's in their heart is a way to take what might seem like a person, like a face, and they got swag, but to begin to find out what they're not telling you, that's the conversation. So the whole idea of making the invisible visible is like asking somebody like, what is your name? Where'd you get that? Or I like your style. That makes me want to know more about you. You know what I'm saying? So I think that most things in life are kind of like interesting from a distance, but they're more interesting as you get closer and you begin.
As you dig in, totally.
Exactly. Yeah.
And speaking of style, Daniel, I have to tell you that probably one of the most interesting things about the kit when I was getting ready to have this conversation with you is the masculine and the feminine in what you're calling the modern woman, right? And if it's one of the, I think, most visual expressions of people, people who may feel invisible, they can feel very visible in what they put on their bodies every day. So let's talk about that, because fashion is a really big part of what visibility means, or using it not to be visible, right? But let's talk about the masculine and feminine for the modern woman and how you're rethinking this and bucking fast fashion.
Can I just say, Daniel, real quick before you go there, that I have been wearing the kit jumpsuits for so many interviews as I'm on the go, as I'm on the move, and I throw my yellow jacket over it. You know exactly, the blue one with the green and the yellow. Oh my God, I've been wearing that thing to pieces. And it is phenomenal because I feel so like myself in it, and I'm so badass in it, and it makes my work better. And I'm not saying that to blow smoke right now. I really mean it. So just to put that out there.
Thank you. I feel like I should hire you two to run my personal PR, because I'm like, I'm glowing. I feel very positive. This is a great panel. Yeah. So I so much, and there's so much here. There's so much here. And I think at the end of the day, fashion has kept my interest for how long has it been? 20 years. Because I have realized how it is accessible to almost everyone at every price point. What I mean by that is that no one needs clothes anymore. There is more than enough in the world. We are not looking for protection for our bodies. We are, as clothes were first invented. which means that it's a want, which means that it comes down to what we are feeling, and tapping into feelings is such an interesting angle to try to make a living, because you are tapping into something that is changing all the time. It is evolving as we grow. Our needs change, our locations, our professions, all of these things. You're essentially, I'm trying to chase an imaginary target. And once you land on it, it changes again. As an Aries, I love the challenge. I love the challenge. I love the idea that, which led me away from architecture, which was, let's build something legacy. Let's build something that is very much, in my eyes, the architect's ego in solid form. A designer, my perspective has always been, these are skills that I'm very good at. I understand color, I understand proportion, I understand shape. How I combine those things is part of the process. How you wear them is very different. It's out of my hands. It's open to interpretation. And I remember having kind of a coming to Jesus moment in the pandemic, which was at the very beginning of the pandemic, which was, who the fuck needs fashion when we are afraid to walk outside? My building, I live in a massive building. There's 916 units in this building. And we were afraid to touch the door, afraid to touch doorknobs. We were afraid to touch the elevator. I sort of had this moment of thinking, what am I going to do with my life if no one really needs fashion right now? And after a few weeks, I remember realizing how I had been inspired in my own personal life through color, through print, through things that I didn't even know I was searching for, but it was that moment on the subway. It was watching someone walk by that put a smile on my face. It was, hey, what are you wearing? Like those moments. And I realized that I had the power to bring that to people still digitally. So the 10-second story is I built a tech company that makes fashion. That allowed me to run this company from my laptop through the scariest time. So I flipped the switch, I turned the company back on, and I realized that the power that I have over cut and color and shape was giving people maybe a distraction from what they couldn't control. It was a moment of joy. Our brand motto is be the bright spot, because if the clothes that we make can be a bright spot in your closet, and then as Uli is experiencing, when you wear that, people then put a smile goes on their face and they ask you, and there's engagement there. That is a pretty powerful tool that I've come to terms with as a designer.
Totally, Daniel. And I think, just simply that one line that you just said, putting a smile on someone's face, right? And when we think about invisibility, invisible to visible, right? What does that mean for someone? Most of the time, it means being seen. It means having an emotional connection to an experience, a person, a thing, anything that actually, I think, ultimately makes someone feel seen. And a lot of times when we're just passing strangers on the street, that being seen
never happened. Yeah.
Usually can come in the form of a smile, or it just doesn't happen, to your point.
Yep.
I want to pause for a second, everyone, because this is a conversation. So if you have any burning questions that you must ask, or anything that you want to contribute while we are having this discussion, please put it in the comments and the chat box. We can see it. I will make sure that we give you some visibility as well before we get to the official Q&A portion of the evening. Uli, I want to go back to you, because here's the thing, right? When you pick this topic, right, invisible to visible, I'm really curious to know, for between the lines, and there are so many amazing stories in there. Everyone, you have got to pre-order your book now, or pick it up on November 9th when it hits your local bookstore shelf. When you chose this topic and we started to talk about what it meant to go from invisible to visible, I know that these two people know your book very well. Is there a reading or anything that you actually want to pull out from your book now while we have a full room and we continue talking about talking about visibility? You're on mute.
I'm still muted. I'm very muted today because I have a cold, and so sometimes I erupt in coughing, and that would be disgusting, and I don't want to give you my digital germs. Yes, I absolutely do want to do a reading. I first want to kind of noodle together on what you just said, Simmone, and also honestly throw that to you, because we need to hear what you're making visible. We've kind of heard from Kamau, from Daniel, from me, but you're doing something incredibly important. And I want for people to have the chance to get to know that, who do not know Poppy Seed yet. I know you as my crab sister. We go way back, and we met each other under tremendous circumstances. And I think tremendous circumstances brings people very close. Crabs are natural nurturers. Crabs are natural healers. And I think that the healing that you provide in the space where you create visibility is very important. Please do tell us about it.
Yeah, sure. In true Uli fashion, sister, I will do that very quickly. So my company is called Poppy Seed Health, and it did come from my own lived experiences, having gone through multiple miscarriages, the first one back in 2016, and I was truly thrown aside in our medical industrial complex. I left that appointment with no medical, mental, or emotional health resources, and I was trying to navigate a complicated system on my own. And so I took to the internet, like so many of us go to find information to care for myself. And it was in just those moments that I found exactly what I needed on the medical side. I called my own care plan back into my doctor's office, and it lit this real fire in me. And so Poppy Seed Health today is a telehealth solution. It's a tech company, but what we are doing is holding space with doulas, midwives, and nurses that will connect with any birthing person to chat with you on demand, literally within seconds, so that, like me, you aren't spinning without any emotional or mental health resources. And one of the things that I know for sure about feeling invisible is the stigma, stigma around the shame of why you feel invisible to begin with. And there are so many people at the intersectionality of our healthcare system, of maternal health care, and so many of us need the support and the partner in navigating while we're on these really important journeys. So that's what we do at Poppy. You know, visibility is a big part of what we do, because you can come to us, and you know that we have the largest, most diverse network of advocates, our doulas, midwives, and nurses, who can meet you where you are, right, in the digital space. And so that visibility is extremely important, as we are in one of the most developed countries with the worst maternal health care outcomes. So I'm always happy to talk about Poppy, because I know that we have people here that want to or need to feel visible on your own journey as you're going through your reproductive health journey.
Yes.
So that's what I do. But I have to tell you that with Daniel and Kamau and Uli, we are visibility change makers in so many ways, right? It's foundational to the work that we do and what we're committing our time to, right?
Yeah.
So Uli.
1,000%. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. And I can't wait to get back to, you know, how cloth, photography, tech, words, they create visibility, right? And so I want to do a reading from Between the Lines as a quick little interlude before we come back to it. Daniel and Kamau can be found in Between the Lines. So that is something to behold and treasure. And I'll read from the introduction for a moment, and do send us your questions as they arise. We do want to talk about making the invisible visible, which is of course the role of an artist. We all have the obligation to make that art together, don't we? Okay, so here it goes from the introduction. Over the last 7 years, Subway Book Review has become many things to many people. Some say it's a movement. Some say it's a social media project. To me, it's a documentation of who we are and where we are going. The more I talk to readers in the underground, unquestionably some of the most imaginative and empathetic people, the more I realize that books are a reflection of our identities and souls. Books reflect everything we are and everything we wish we could be. At Broadway Lafayette Station, I met Verena, who read No One Tells You This and talked about living a meaningful life as a child-free woman. At Columbus Circle, Saima told me that They Say, I Say helped her to address hurtful confrontations about her hijab. Larry shared his experience as a foster kid in Queens with me during a conversation about Becoming by Michelle Obama. Emmanuel read De Perfil and described what it felt like to be a Mexican immigrant in today's America. I also started to connect the dots above ground. M Train by Patti Smith and a chicken coop sighting in the middle of Brooklyn brought a grieving photographer named Ellie peace after her mother's passing. Her story made me want to find the person behind the chicken coop. And it took a few months, but eventually I did sit down with Gregory Anderson, the man who had built not only one, but several chicken coops all over the city in response to 9/11. Some conversations I had a chance to revisit, like the one with Kamau Ware, who became one of my closest friends over our shared love for public spaces. Others were fleeting. I'll never forget the day in 2018 when I randomly saw Ta-Nehisi Coates on the 6th train reading Il Fares the Land by Tony Judd. We only rode one stop together, but his generosity filled me up as if we had sat down for 1 hour. Between the Lines is a collection of some of my favorite encounters. Each one has shown me that our connections are endless. I've talked to people in all 5 boroughs. I've ridden every train line end to end. I've laughed, cried, and hugged more strangers than I can count. But of course, not all conversations have been easy. Some hit my blind spots and some hurt my soul. I've heard personal accounts of loss, discrimination, hate, and other threats that many people face daily and desperately wish to escape from. Each book built a bridge, not just for the readers, but also for me, leading into other lives and possibilities. Each story gave me the chance to learn and unlearn what I thought about my place in the world. And after talking over 1,000 people, I've come to realize that these conversations aren't about one person's knowledge or lack thereof. The point is to share each other's reality and truth, even for just a moment. In The Peregrine, a book I picked up because it came highly recommended by one of my favorite documentarians, Werner Herzog, a line reads, "The hardest thing of all to see is what is really there." How lucky we are to find a moment where we can see each other clearly, where we can meet people we don't know and go places we've never been to through their stories. Our world is changing at lightning speed, and this is the time to remember that we are meant to be a wonder for each other. I often think about what astrophysicist Moya McTeer said about this to me at 81st Street Station in front of a mural of our solar system. She summed up perfectly what the underground had been whispering into my ear for years. On the cosmic scale of the universe, an individual life matters very little. It can be missed in the blink of an eye. But on Earth, every thought and every action matters. Right here, right now, you make all the difference.
Oh, that was incredible.
Uli, just beautiful, really beautiful.
And we have all read the book. Some of us are in the book and still hearing it from you, the author, the mind, the beauty behind doing this work and building Subway Book Review and putting all of that into between the lines for all of us to enjoy and go into the underground with you is so phenomenal. I'm going to let you catch your breath because I know you have a cough, but
this cough is trying to kill me, but it won't. COVID didn't kill me
not.
last year, so this cough is not going to succeed either.
But I do want to talk about the literal or proverbial underground with Kamau and Daniel, right? So we know where Uli's literal underground is. But tell me, let's start with you, Kamau. Where's your underground, or proverbial or literal? This is going to be an interesting answer from you, I know for sure. Where are you meeting your people?
Well, I would say you said proverbial or literal.
Or literal, or both.
It's both. It's both.
I know. I know.
There are literal African burial grounds being discovered on a regular basis. Queens, Brooklyn, parts of Manhattan. And if you go deeper, you're going to find remains of, people who are American indigenous. A lot of these people's lives, as you come up the layers, have been silenced during their lifetime. And also, again, as we pretend as if they were never here. And so in many regards, there is a real underground, beneath our feet of stories to be told, but also those energies, those spirits are very much a part of the conversation. And there's psychic spaces in New York City where things that seem to always happen or seem to always recreate or regenerate the same kind of vibe. And if you know Manhattan and you know New York, you know those kind of spaces. One of them is Washington Park, which was actually in the 1600s, after 1644, it was the home of a Black person that was once enslaved to the West Indian Dutch Company, who became more autonomous and a landowner. And if you look at Washington Square Park, it's always been a place of gathering, of protest, of people who are others, you know what I mean? And I think that it's interesting to think about the air and the ground all kind of having this connectivity that you can tap into with some research, but that research more or less kind of backs up sometimes what you might just have as a feeling or as a sentiment. And so the underground is real. What you can't obviously see is often more interesting than what you do see. What people put inside the public square often is less interesting than what's missing. And so I think that we all should be about reading just like you do a book. I mean, I think there's a certain level of literacy that you have as an avid walker, walking down the street, reading the landscape, reading your own sentiment, and from there creating pictures and stories where you're the author.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Kamau. So, I know that we probably have folks who are here with us from Portland and really all over the country, but in New York City, if you know anything about Manhattan itself, that the island itself, there are layers and layers and layers and layers built on top of quartz. So the vibrations are real, right? And so the literal underground is kind of sandwiched between all of this, right? So that's really incredible. And I know that you're an avid walker, obviously, which inspired, I know, Black Gotham Experience. So Daniel, tell us a bit about your underground.
It's so funny. I'm like, Kamau and I just met tonight, and I'm like, wow, we are living parallel lives without ever meeting each other. In short, like park benches. I'm a very voyeuristic person. I like to sit and watch, which I think is my version of listening. I don't like engaging and talking. To me, is similar to what Kamau was saying, which is what is not being said, what is not being, like it's living in that in between that I like to fill in the picture. I like to sort of listen and absorb, and I love watching body language. I love watching people interact. It's the best part about living in this garbage dump of a city that I love. It is, and it's also the thing, to be honest, it's the thing I've missed the most in the last 2 years. I have missed moments, those interactions that mean nothing in the scope of the end of your day, but literally say so much when you compound it and add it up. So for me, it's a park bench on the northwest corner of Washington Square Park. It's the park bench on the most west corner of inside Columbia campus. It is the park bench on 78th and Broadway. It's this idea that I love being a perch. So a lot of my collected stories, I've designed my first collection off of that one of those park benches, I had the most glorious interaction, which is I'm hyping this up too much. I remember I was on this park bench and I was sketching. Okay, so I was on this park bench and I was sketching and I had headphones on, and they were like back in the day when like there were the really big headphones. So it clearly said, "Don't talk to me." It clearly said I'm in the middle of something. So I'm sitting and sketching, and I have my coat on, my scarf, and I'm just watching stuff. And this woman comes by, and she says something, and I lift my headphone off, and I was like, "I'm sorry, what was that?" And she goes, "Oh, well, what are you working on?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just drawing, just designing some stuff for a collection and stuff, and blah blah blah." So we had about a 2-minute banter, and she got up to walk away. And so I took my headphone back off, and I said, "Oh, by the way, I'm Daniel. It was a real pleasure to meet you." And she said, "Oh, it's all good. We don't have to do that." And I was taken aback, because being a nice Midwest boy, I thought that is what you do. And she goes, "It's okay." She's like, "This was just a moment." And she turned and walked away. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't care about her name. I'm not going to remember her name. And it wasn't about that superficiality of an interaction. It was, we were drawn together for a moment, we clash, and I'm sitting here telling these random people on this call that defined how I kind of absorb and interact in this city. So yeah, I hope that doesn't come across as too harsh, but it stuck with me. The idea that you don't have to talk all the time. You don't have to, you just being a participant and listening and absorbing sometimes speaks more volume.
That energy transference is real, right? Like
huge.
You can establish such depth and such visibility in those authentic moments that aren't the, "Hi, my name is, this is where I work, this is what I do, this is where I live, what's your kids?" Like there's just these moments that can sometimes be the strongest few moments in that day for you, and the most memorable as well. And
would you say that the lines that we speak, it is between the lines? That's the inner.
You know what?
Okay, I'll let you take it.
That's
a great
point. No, I love that. I love that. I love that.
Daniel, you're a very good publicist. I may need to hire you.
And actually, Uli, because we have a few minutes before we do open it up to everyone for Q&A. I'm going to ask a simple question, but I promise you so many people want to know. I wanted to know as well. And I think hearing it from you is going to be really special. But between the lines, the title, what does it mean? Why did you name your first publication Between the Lines?
What a good question. And I haven't gotten that question yet. So you're catching me. You're catching me in the honest truth of it. That title came to me before the concept of the book came to me. That title was, triple entendres, seriously. Right? It's absolutely reading between the lines, yes. The unspoken is where all the truth lies, in my opinion, right? Everything that is not being said, which is the invisible, which is what we're talking about, but that is on display in broad daylight, available to all of us, which is what Daniel's observing when he's on a park bench, which is what Kamau's observing when he's walking the land, which is, Simmone, what you're observing when you're engaging with mothers, right? These are all of the miracles that are out for us in broad daylight, ready to be collected. And sometimes we have to ask about them very directly. Sometimes we just have to sit and listen. Sometimes we just have to watch and see. But the thing that is always going to be happening is that we'll get the truth, and we'll get the real deal, and we'll get sometimes the thing that's not always pretty or comfortable, but it is what we need to hear, or what we need to see, or what we need to sit with. It is the space that we need to occupy, if at all we want to grow and we want to evolve. And to me, that is so critical for us at this moment in time. I think that when I started this project, my main goal was to simply, which was a large mission at the time, but to simply give the microphone to people who are often not heard. And that has changed in the media landscape, in the publishing industry. I will go as far and say that I have affected the publishing industry by showing the publishers, book publishers, what people are reading. But now we have these individual voices, and we have to now come together as a chorus and hear what song we're singing, so that we can figure out what we're going to do together with our future, which is always a shared future. Our future is never separate from each other. It's always going to be tied together, if we like it or not. With some people, we really don't want to share a future, and that's okay. Maybe, that happens with boundaries and at a distance, but it's still our joint future. So we got to get real, we got to get truthful. And I'm curious what Between the Lines means to all of you, because I'm sure that everyone has a different interpretation of it. Or what happens between the lines. Yeah.
Listen, I'll go first, and then I would love for everyone, I'm going to open it up. It's 1:45 now. So please, I'm going to open up the floor to anyone in the chat for Q&A or comments. So maybe tell us what Between the Lines means for you. I'm not typically so literal, but I took it very literally. And that is, in the New York subway system, there are a lot of lines. And so literally meeting people and talking to them between the lines, although I do know that Uli's, I think her favorite train is the G train still in Brooklyn. But between all of the lines, of which she has been on all of them, between the lines of the subway trains and also the lines that bring people to and fro every day, and finding people to make visible. So I took it very literally. How about you, Daniel?
For me, it's reiterating what I said before, which is it's the silence. It's what happens kind of between the unspoken. I think there's also something from a literary analogy of what is even the author not saying between the lines. It's my boyfriend's an actor director, and often talks to me about, when he's developing stories, about you don't have to hammer them over the head with it. What is not being spoken in between those two lines? And not to like wrap all of this in a cute little bow, but it's also what I love about the visual arts. It's what I love about fashion. It's what you are not saying, what you are saying. Yeah.
And Kamau?
Well, I think that, as I've stated in many ways, my work is about a dialogue with the dead. Even when it comes to you tapping into your archive and your meaning and your sentiments about place and about history and being a historic actor, you're in conversation just with your DNA, your feelings, represents people who aren't here, And I think that Between the Lines, in many respects, is how many books out there exist by people who are not here, and how many of us are writing books now that are going to exist after we're gone. And so in many ways, Between the Lines is a dialogue with us and those who haven't come and those who are going to come. And if you think about it, like, that's to make it, what's it said, we're like similar spirits. Like, a lot of my artwork has lines in it, as you can see on this book and behind me. And that etching style of lines, philosophically for me, means that these are ancestors. You have this line in a space, a line in a space, and all those lines and spaces means that these are figures who are on the other side, and we're interpreting their lives now. And when I think about Between the Lines, as far as like reading and in motion, that we're really having a dialogue that is timeless. And to read is to be in a timeless conversation.
I love that Rosie is in this conversation with us, by the way, just amplifying what Daniel said. What you are not saying, you are saying. It's so true, right? With our body language and our expressions, how we interact with each other, the voices that we're hearing that aren't there. When I say that, I'm talking about ancestors and our elders who are on the other side, right? So much of this. Rosie also, by the way, Danielle has already bought the kit. She said it earlier in the chat. I meant to say that.
You mean this order that just came in?
Rosie, you're what would go fantastic with the kit with Daniel's fashion would be Between the
Rosie.
Lines, the book. You should pick it up or pre-order.
This is the best telethon, Simmone. It's like I'm on every 15 minutes. She's like, pre-order now for the best deal. You're gonna get it at Powell's for the best of price.
That's right. And
This
we
is
can't, I
amazing.
mean, thank you, Powell's, for hosting us tonight, but you will not be able to miss this book. Hold it up for me, please. Because
Of course we're
it
gonna
is the
hold. You
most
can't miss it.
beautiful.
Subway,
I mean, you cannot miss it.
You can't miss it.
And if you miss it at Powell's, tell them to put it right in front when you walk through the door.
Get yours signed if you can.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
right.
you did that. That was my first signature and I was so nervous. I forgot how to do my name, but it is my signature. It is my hand. Daniel, you just asked something that I did want to speak to that goes with what Kamau was saying, which was of course stunning. And, you know, I wish I could just have a live stream of Kamau's thoughts that I could just listen to, quite frankly.
Same.
So you said, do I know if anyone I interviewed is no longer with us? And have you determined that this is their way to live on? One thing that was really interesting, and this also goes directly back to what you were saying, Kamau, is that I tried to find out if I could get in touch with the authors whose books are represented in Between the Lines, right? And a lot of them have passed, of course, you know, and the ones who are alive are so thrilled and are so incredibly delighted to be commemorated this way in such a kind of meta, right? A book about books for readers like who love reading. It's so much. It's so triple water sign, I know. And then the other thing that happened a couple of years ago was that suddenly an old post on Instagram started to get a lot of traction, as in like a lot of people were commenting on it. A lot of people left, you know, like emoji flowers. A lot of people liked it, came together around it. And I reached out to one of those people and I said, it's just curious, you just left such a lovely comment here. May I ask you who you are and how you know this person? And they said that the woman that I had spoken with, who was reading a book at the time about death and passing, because she had just been diagnosed with breast cancer and decided to speak to me on her way home from chemo, had in fact passed. And she was very young. She was in her 30s. And her friends were holding not a funeral service, but they were holding a memorial service of sorts on that post because they felt that she was so well represented there and it was a place for them to remember her. And so I think we forget, but that every interaction we have is a sort of memorial, you know, and every interaction we have with a stranger or with a friend is a monument to that time. And we can have a lot of fun with it and it can be lighthearted with it, which is also important, right? Humor is what gets us through, but it is also something to savor. And that's what I mean by like, we are really truly meant to be a wonder for each other in that way, you know, that we get to be here with each other right now. That's pretty tremendous. That's pretty incredible.
You know what, Uli, on that note, Sarah has a question that I'm going to read to you here. The subway is such a liminal space, and I imagine that contributes to people's willingness or openness to engage or share with a stranger. Why do you think liminal spaces open people up? How does liminality contribute to your work or art?
I was on mute again. I've not done that as much as I have done that tonight, but here we are. Okay, unmuted. The subway is absolutely a liminal space because it's the place in between, right? That's what liminal means. It's the world between worlds. And on the subway, you're in transit, you're in motion, you're going from one place to another. You haven't arrived yet at your destination. It's the most interesting place of all places. You're literally becoming, you know? And that to me is absolutely why I wanted to be down there and why I wanted to capture that space. Because it is the most transformative of of many spaces in New York City. Absolutely. And we love to hate the MTA, which just turned 117. Yesterday was Subway Day. Oh my God. I mean, she's starting to show her age a little. She needs a tiny little lift. That L train needs some love, but it is truly our lifeline, and it is the beating heart of New York City. And so many cities have that, right? That kind of thing that keeps us going and that keeps us alive and sustained.
May I just also want to add, just in the birth work that we do at Poppy, one of the most shocking, I think, statistics that I learned along the way is the amount of people who actually have transportation insecurity in our country. And they depend so much on public transportation. And so not knowing it or knowing it, right? We are riding the subway trains with people who truly have no other way to get to where they're going. In other words, no other privilege of choice, right? And so I think that's the most interesting too. And so I think this question is really great because we're asking about liminal space, but for some people, it's the space they have to be in, right? To go where they're going. So having Uli and having an opportunity, she doesn't necessarily know that, right? I don't think, Uli, when you're approaching people on the subway, you have no idea what their story is going to be. And I think it equalizes, right, the access to the kinds of moments that we can have with each other, and also make people visible who weren't even expecting it.
Thank you for putting it that way, love.
Yeah.
I wanted to chime in real quickly. There's one thing that's dawning on me as you were talking, was the idea that there's a little bit of anonymity that I feel on the subway, that it's not in my neighborhood and it's not in my work, but it's in transit. And it's something that I sort of equate to travel in general, which is like those conversations, thinking back to those conversations that I've had on the plane with the person I'm sitting next to, that I will most likely never see again, it is this moment in time of this clash collision that no one knows, that sense of both freedom and insecurity, I think, is such an interesting clash to acknowledge when you're in transit, because you don't have the preconceptions of, I'm this at the office, I am known as this person, so I have to be this way. You're just another body. I find that I'm just kind of coming to terms with that. It's very interesting.
So we have a few more minutes here. I want to make sure that you get your questions or your comments in, whatever you'd like for Kamau, Daniel, and Uli. And I'm keeping an eye on the boxes here, but while we're waiting for folks to chime in, or for the shy folks to muster up the courage, we're totally approachable. Please ask us anything. Don't worry.
Speak for yourself.
You will answer.
Speak for yourself. I don't want to hear it.
I don't see the big headphones. You're approachable tonight.
I have a question for all the panelists, and it's not going to be what are you reading. It's going to be, where are you going? Who do you want to become? Oh, I know.
Kamau said he's taking that one.
Yeah.
That's not a 2-minute response.
Well, I can start.
Powell said we could go slightly over.
Yeah. Oh wait, hold on, before we answer that, and maybe we end on that because it's a good one. We do have a question, and this is from Kate or Kat. One of the two. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Uli, while on the subway, do you find people tend to read and talk about more about their future dreams or their current reality? Let me say that again. When you're on the subway, Uli, do you find that people tend to talk about their future dreams, to your point of the question you just asked, or their current reality?
I love this. Thank you, Kate. I will honestly say both, but it is very future oriented. It is absolutely about who you are becoming, because a book changes you. We all know this. When we read a really good book, it infiltrates our system, and you cannot shed it or let go of that ever again. It's in you and it wants to change you. And change is not always future oriented. Change can also be past oriented. Change can be present oriented, but it wants to transform you. And so that is what the conversations that really make me the most excited and that light me up the most is to get that, right? To capture that moment of transformation, that like, here's who I was, here's what's on my mind, and here is how that's going to shape me. That's what it thrills me and excites me. I also want to say that Josh, who I know from Oregon days, just said when riding the subway, I've always tried to avoid conversations since they have historically been awful conversations I can't escape because I'm literally trapped in a steel tube. Any funny stories of being rejected for an interview? Josh, New York City, you know, everything has happened to me. I once was stalked by a man in a full army fatigue with a make-believe gun, and he pretended to shoot me, which was not funny at the time.
But that was how we met, and that is a great story.
That's the meat
oh my God
that we just don't know about.
Daniel, oh my God, I've escaped projectile vomit. I've held a woman's hair while vomiting. I mean, I've seen it all. I mean, it's all out there to be had. It's all, the subway is a crazy place because it's very extreme, because everybody's on it, right? We're all there. So you got to be ready for anything. But I've also, you know, met lifelong friends. It's truly where all possibility awaits.
Sounds like you have your own like bloopers, like jackass reel.
Yeah. And this was before the time when we were just all traveling with hand sanitizer. So just imagine those vomiting moments and hair.
Don't imagine them, actually. Don't erase them from your mind. Let's talk about becoming again.
Yeah. So if there, I'm keeping an eye on the box, but I'm going to start with this question: where are we going? And I was going to,
or even what are you transforming? You know, if that's like too much, maybe there's something you're alchemizing right now, and I will join you, because I get that that's a big question. But you know, I love big questions. We're never shy with big questions over here.
Yeah, and we're Crab Sisters. I'm totally fine answering the big question because I have an answer for you, and that is, for me, it is becoming a parent in whatever way that is going to come to me. And that's a very, direct answer because of my own personal journey. But I think so often we just forget that we aren't alone, no matter what the circumstances are. When I need to remember, talking about making the invisible visible, when I need to remember, I remember that, 1 in 4 people will experience a pregnancy loss. I remember that 1 in 8 people are actually on an infertility journey, and that the way we make our families can come in all sorts of ways. And thank goodness for that. So that's where I'm going. I mean, and I'm transforming things on the way, but that is definitely where I'm going. That is a really honest answer.
So mic drop, Simmone, we're done.
No, come on, Kamau and Daniel, you got to do it. And then we'll sign off and say goodnight to all of our new friends, and especially Rosie. Thank you for being in this conversation with us, and Josh and Sarah, who asked questions, and everyone else that came tonight. We appreciate you. But let's wrap this up, and you give your answer if you'd like.
I would say if there's one thing I want to, or you said, where are we going? Is that what you said?
Or what are you transforming?
Yeah, transforming, alchemizing, however you want to interpret it.
Yeah, I would like to transform walking. I would like for walking not to be transportation, not to just be getting from A to B. I like for walking to be something that is a spiritual experience. There's people who do breath work, who do meditation. You're doing all those things while you're getting from A to B, but so busy, often you're like so busy getting from one place to the next that I'll put it like this. This almost kind of connects to what you were saying, Simmone, about birth. no human being remembers learning how to walk. We all forgot. It's not something that is in our front of our mind. It's a lost event. It was probably traumatizing as hell. And anything that we do as adults professionally, we've already done the impossible thing by figuring out how to go from being carried to walking on our own. And I think that there's a magic in that we can reconnect to if we slow down and appreciate what our bodies are doing when we go from one place to the next, especially if we're intentional about what we're doing with our bodies and our souls and our minds as we're taking in landscapes and breathing properly the entire time.
So true. Oh, I love that.
Now,
So
I know I'm taking that
Daniel.
away the most. Yeah, I'm taking that to heart as well. As again, as a self-identified workaholic and I consider myself efficient. The idea of enjoying something for the sake of not having an objective, I think, is so important. Something that I think we hopefully are more attuned to our own bodies in the past 2 years, about how those little things don't need to have a direction. They don't have to have a destination, just doing them. To answer the question, I have come to terms that I am comfortable at this point being a leader in transforming the very toxic fashion industry. I started 5 years ago as a dream. It moved from dream into a small startup. It has surpassed that. It has blown up. I am fully okay living in this very uncharted territory for me. I've never grown a company this big before. No one in the world is doing what we're doing, and that's okay. And that comes with a shitload of uncertainty, but I'm okay not replicating, as Kamau has said, not replicating what doesn't work and what has ruined the planet, and no one should die for fucking clothes. Like, the excuses we make to the excuses that we tell ourselves to make things that we want attainable is just no longer acceptable. So yeah, Kamau, preach. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
Uli, do you want to answer your own question? Or
I have to, otherwise it'd be straight up cop out. You know, I'm not going to do that. I want to alchemize pressure into joy. I want to make like the diamond, right? The pressure makes the diamond. So, but I think that all of us have felt so much pressure over the last 2 years, year and a half. I think a lot of us are exhausted, and I want to acknowledge everyone for being here and listening in on a conversation that hopefully filled you up and illuminated you, right? That's the point of Between the Lines, is to give you some light and to give you some good energy and life juice so that you can go forth and be magical out there yourself. I think we got to acknowledge where we are, and we got to acknowledge our exhaustion, and we got to acknowledge that sometimes we're tired and stressed, but that together we're going to get it done, and we're going to also go further, and we're going to be illuminated together as a collective. So that to me means we need more joy again, and we need to be more joyful for each other. And I would like to start with that myself, you know, because I can get pretty stressed out. I'll say it. And sorry, we have a comment from Charles Steen, who is such an old Portland friend. It's so insane. Charles, thank you. You just said to us, but I'm going to read it out loud. I really love how you four can actually listen to each other. I would love to buy you all drinks and listen to you four talk. Thank you, XOXOXO. That is the sweetest. And before we go, I want to take a photo of us. So I need all panelists to give me their best smiles for just a second, or however you want to be commemorated. 1, 2, and a 3. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Come on, we'll have an old fashioned.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Powell's, for hosting us tonight. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for letting us go over. But I just real quick, Daniel, where can we find you? Kamau, where can we find you? Uli, where can we find you? Daniel.
www.thekit.com, and my full name at Daniel Vosovic on Instagram and everywhere else.
Kamau.
blackgotham.com.
Uli.
Subway Book Review on Instagram at Subway Book Review and subwaybookrareview.co.
And Between the Lines on shelves on November 9th. Pre-order now. Go get it the day of. You can find me, Simmone Taitt, really actually my company, at Poppy Seed Health. Thank you and good night, everyone.
And thank you so much, Uli and Simmone and Daniel and Kamau, all of you out there. It was so great to have you with us tonight. Please consider purchasing a copy of Between the Lines and by visiting powells.com. Certainly, it's awesome. So, and while you're there, be sure to check out our upcoming events, and we look forward to seeing you at another one soon. So, all right, thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, Uli. Congratulations.
Thank
congrats.
you. Lots of love.
Congratulations on the book.
Yes.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Proud.
Thank
Good
you
night.
for being here. Good night.
Bye, everyone.
All right, good night, everyone.